Greetings, friends and enemies, and welcome back to Art by Flan. Today we have a very special video. As you can see, we're starting out with a little unboxing of the brand new HUION KAMVAS Pro 13. I bought this to replace my old Wacom Cintiq 12WX, which I double checked is about 11 years old by this point. So it was time for an upgrade, and as much as I really wanted another Wacom product, I had heard really good things about HUION, and they just released this brand new tablet, so it was in my budget. Ooh, nice velvety box there. It was in my budget on pre-sale, so I picked it up. So we're gonna go talk about a little unboxing. So first here we have the actual tablet itself and its protective plastic. That's the back. Oh no, that was the front. Oh, this is the back. Can't really see in the video. So that's the actual tablet itself. It is 13 inches of screen, a little bit bigger with the stuff that goes around it. Here I am, I'm pulling it out. Hi me, hello, there's my camera setup. It's kind of janky because I still don't have my desk completely set up, but you can see me, the bright screen, the express keys, and such. My favorite part is this warm tip. Please peel off this mask before use, and I struggle with it. But first of all, what is a warm tip? Is it different than a cool tip? Why did you put warm tip, HUION? What does that mean? What does that entail? That makes me uncomfortable. So you can see me struggle to get stuff out of here quite a bit. We have a bunch of paperwork, where to download drivers. You can see me reading that. That's kind of cool. Next up, we have the stand, which again, I struggled to get out. I struggled to get everything out of this box, apparently. The stand is a separate piece. I know with the Wacom Cintiq, it is all one piece, but for this particular one, it's a separate piece. And you just lift up the front there. Do I take it out? I think I take it out. I recorded this before I went on a big trip, so I don't remember if I took it out or not. Looks like I am, to kind of give you guys a look at what this stand looks like. I'm not a huge fan of the stand. Now that I've used the tablet for a bit, I noticed the tablet itself tends to slip off the little lip edge quite a bit, and it doesn't stand up straight enough for what I liked, because I use it as a second, my tablet as a second monitor. So I don't like that it doesn't, it's really great for ergonomic drawing, not so great for sitting it more upright to use as a monitor. But yeah, other than that, it's an okay stand, and I'll talk more in depth about that later. But as you can see, you just lift up those metal bars and hook them to the little bits on the back to stand it up, and then there's that little lip that folds out on the front, so you can just plop your tablet right on there and it will keep it up most of the time. Moving on, we got some other goodies in the box here. It looks like we have this. This is what sold me on this tablet. The main reason I didn't get a HUION tablet before is because you had to charge the pen. And it comes with 2 buttons on it, and replaceable nibs. The whole thing comes with 10 nibs, but there's no eraser on the pen. But anyway, the main thing I didn't like about HUION tablets is that you had to charge the pen. And yes, they gave you 2, so you could charge them all at one time, or one while you use the other, but it just wasn't good for me. And there's the nibs and the nib remover inside the nifty donut pen holder. I call it my donut now. But you had to plug up the pen and recharge it. If you've ever watched a HUION review, you'll know that that's the case. And I hated that. Well, when I was looking at replacing my current tablet, I noticed that this one had a new batteryless pen, which was sold. I was sold. It was that I got it. Another thing that sold me is the lack of clutter in terms of wires. So what we have here is a 3-in-1 wire. One end is a USB-C, right there, the little square one, goes straight into the tablet. And on the other end, which you'll see here in just a moment, I think I showed it, were 3 separate prongs. One for the power cable, one for the HDMI, and one for the USB. And here we have a universal power adapter. That's the end that plugs into the 3-in-1 cable. And of course we have the plug-in for the US. Depending on where you live, you'll get the plug-in that matches what your adapter is. And we also have some paperwork. It came with a glove, a cleaning cloth, and a quick setup guide, which you can see right there. So that was everything that was in the box. So let's get on to a little speed paint to show you guys what's going on. So as I was saying, the pen was the main reason I picked up the HUION KAMVAS Pro 13. It was their brand new batteryless pen. I never wanted to have to charge my pen. I was spoiled from years of Wacom. I didn't want to have to deal with that because I have enough clutter on my desk that I didn't want to have to plug one more thing in. I'm working very hard to declutter and reduce how much stuff I have plugged into my wall. So even if the pen had been rechargeable, I probably wouldn't have gotten this. It was a big selling point for me, and I'm really glad it did because it's a step in the right direction, and I'm absolutely in love with this tablet versus my old one. So prior to the HUION Kamvas Pro 13, I was, as I've said, using the Wacom 12WX. Now, the Kamvas Pro 13 was released just this year, as in they started taking pre-orders in July and shipped them out at the beginning of September. No, end of August, and I received mine at the beginning of September. So this is a brand new to the market tablet, whereas my Wacom Cintiq had been out since 2007, making it over 11 years old. So I was definitely due for an upgrade. And some of the differences aren't that great. Some of the differences are really big. For example, the work area of my Wacom 12WX, my Cintiq 12WX was 12 inches, but it had 2 or 3 inches of extra space around it to hold all the buttons and express keys and the wires and stuff, just because it was an older model. Whereas the Kamvas Pro 13 is 13 inches, but it has maybe an inch or two of space around it. I like a smaller working area. That's just what I'm used to, so I didn't want to go any bigger because usually they're out of my price range. This one was just an inch bigger than what I wanted and what I was used to, and was within my price range. So it's also really good about that. There's not a lot of wasted space in terms of making the tablet bigger and bulkier by putting all the extra stuff that's needed around it. The resolution is also big, really different, really big, really different. So the resolution of the Kamvas Pro 13, because it is a newer tablet, is 1920 by 1080, pretty standard. The resolution of my Cintiq 12WX was 1280 by 800. Not great for this day and age, especially if you're doing HD stuff like I kind of tried to do. Both styluses are battery free, like I said, a really big selling point. HUION's previous tablets had rechargeable pens, and everybody said it wasn't a big deal, but it was just kind of this sticking point for me. I didn't want to have to recharge my pen. I didn't want to accidentally forget to plug one in and not be able to draw because I didn't have a pen because they were both charging, or I forgot to charge one, and it was not something I wanted to, one more thing to worry about when wanting to draw digitally, because one of my favorite things about drawing digitally is I can pick up my pen, start up my art program, and go. I don't have to worry about charging a pen or finding it, because I've been pretty good for the last 11 or so years about finding my pen, keeping my stylus within reach. I will say the HUION pen does not have an eraser end. I know the Wacom pens do. I personally never used it that much. I know a lot of people really like that. Because it mimicked more of a real pencil. You just flipped it over and erased. But because I don't use the eraser on any of my pencils anyway, I pick up and have like a square eraser instead of the one on the back of the pencil. I'm used to just going over and tapping on the eraser just to do my work. So that's not a stickler for me, but it definitely could be for somebody else in terms of the HUION pen. Express keys. Now, the Cintiq definitely had the upper hand in this one. It had 10 keys total and 2 different touch bars. So that means you could have 10 different things hotkeyed to your tablet at all times. I know some people just never use hotkeys. I know some people, like me, are really used to them and sort of depend on them to kind of do their art, whereas the HUION only has 4 keys and 1 bar. And I know you could probably, much like Wacom, buy an external hotkey thing, but it's not really that big of a deal. Like, I've definitely managed to get used to it quickly. It's reduced how many keys I'm dependent on and just keeps me with the important things. One thing I will say though is the power button is located right above the top 2 express keys on the left hand side. I'm right-handed, so I like to use the keys on the left-hand side, which is another positive for this tablet. If you are left-handed, you can just flip it so that the plug-in is on the left-hand side and the express keys are on the right, so you can focus on drawing with your left hand and your express keys are on the right. So it's versatile in that way as well. But I found myself multiple times, and you may even see it in the speed paint in the background, where I hit the power button instead of the key I have as the undo button. So I turn off the tablet and mess up my recording and just end up messing up all sorts of things. If it were placed a little higher on the tablet, I could avoid that, but it's not. It's like right next to the button, so it's easy to hit. And I've tried assigning the keys to the lower two, because it's 2 above the express bar, 2 below the express bar, and I've tried that, but it's not as comfortable. My arm starts to cramp because it's pressed so low down on the tablet, whereas with the upper ones, they work just fine, for my arm at least. So that's one con I don't particularly like, is that the power button is so close to your express keys that you often end up hitting it when you need to hit an express key. The Wacom Cintiq didn't have this issue, because to turn it on, it was a slider button on top of the actual tablet, so you never hit it unless you absolutely meant to. Pressure levels is another big difference between the two. Like I said, keep in mind the Wacom Cintiq is 10 years old, and the Kamvas Pro 13 is barely a month old. The Wacom Cintiq had only 1,024 levels of pressure sensitivity, whereas the Kamvas Pro 13 has 8,192 levels. Now, that's a big difference, and for me personally, it's taken some getting used to. Both tablets had tilt support, so that's not new, but with so many new levels of pressure sensitivity, I have to rethink or retrain my hand to do line art. So that's one of the reasons I wanted to include the speed paint with line art in it, because I wanted to get used to it, essentially, because before I could press down a little harder and not get, you know, a drastic change with the limited levels of sensitivity, but with this particular one, I go from 0 to 100 real quick. So it's gonna take some time to retrain my hand to get used to the level of pressure sensitivity, which I'm so excited about, because I don't know, it's brand new. I'm excited, y'all. The other thing I was thinking about when I talked about during the unboxing is the stand. The Wacom Cintiq had a stand built into the back, so you essentially hit a slidey button and it popped the stand free, and you tilted it and adjusted it how you needed. The downside to that was that over time it began to just get old. It wore out, so I would find it slowly slipping down, almost laying flat on itself, because it didn't have the resistance to stay up anymore. With the Kamvas Pro 13, you have an external stand piece, which I showed at the unboxing in the beginning, with the different levels and different kind of metal stand pieces. Like I said in that, it's an okay stand, but it doesn't sit up high enough when not in use for me, because like I said, I use it as a second monitor, and it's great when I'm drawing because I can lay it as flat as I need to, and even the highest setting is very ergonomic for my drawing. But when I'm just using it as a monitor, it's not great. It's still at an angle that's too sharp to really see anything. But if that's not a problem for you, then it's a great stand. My other complaint is the lip that holds the tablet is not big enough, essentially. It's a little shelf that your tablet sits on, and that's great if you're not moving it, but right now my desk is kind of small, and I do have to readjust and move everything, and I often find the tablet slipping off of it when I'm moving, or even when I'm just regular drawing. If I adjust it if I move just the right way, it slips off that little edge lip thing and wants to slide off down the table, and I don't particularly care for that. I mean, it's a solid built tablet, it's a solid built stand. It's really nice. It's just those little nitpicky things that I'm not a fan of. The other difference between the Cintiq and the Canvas Pro are colors. So historically, one of the main issues with the Wacom Cintiq 12WX is the inability to properly calibrate colors. There were such vast differences between what I saw on my tablet and what I saw on my monitor that I would have to keep a window open on my monitor while I worked to make sure the colors were going to look good there, as they would be drastically different if I just depended on the 12WX to show me what the colors were. This was also really obvious after I got a new monitor, and the colors on my monitor were excellent, spectacular, and the colors on my tablet on the 12WX were kind of poopy garbage. But with the Canvas Pro 13, again, because it's newer, the colors are much closer, if not exactly like my regular monitor. So I don't have to do all that guesswork and keep up extra windows open just to make sure the colors look right on everything in my house. I know that's sort of a con of digital art in general, but with the Canvas Pro being newer and having a higher color gamut than the 12WX, it's something I have to worry less about. Other things are the amount of cords. Because the Wacom Cintiq 12WX is so much older, it could only go DVI or VGA, which are kind of outdated at this point. There was no option for HDMI, and you had to have all these cords and this big bulky converter box that sat at the back of my computer, and you had one big thick cord. They were all thick cords. None of these were thin manageable cords. They were big thick cords that plugged into the wall and got tangled up, and you need one into the wall, one into the actual tablet, one into the computer, and if you didn't do that, you needed an adapter for the computer. If you didn't have a DVI or VGA, so you needed adapters so you could fit it, and it was a mess. Plus the USB that had to go in too. An absolute mess back there, and I hated it. Okay, the Canvas Pro 13, as I showed you at the beginning, has one cord with a USB-C on one end to plug into the actual tablet, and on the other end, it splits off into 3 different cords: the USB, the HDMI, and the power cable. So you take the plug it into the wall, take the end of that cable, plug it into the end on the 3-in-1 cable, and you're good to go. No fuss, no muss, no big bulky converter boxes, nothing. And I'm absolutely in love with that. Like I said before, I'm trying to downsize a lot of the things I have plugged in, and that is one of the great ways to do it. Like I said, the 12WX doesn't have an HDMI, but again, that's a product of it being almost 12 years old. It's just an older piece of equipment, and HDMI wasn't as in use back then as it is today. So overall, I really love my Canvas Pro 13 so far. It's taken some getting used to. Obviously, I'm still going to have to practice with it, use it in general. I've been in and out of town for the last week, so I've gotten to use it. I've gotten to use it some, but enough to make this video in a comparison to my 12WX. But I'm definitely looking forward to using it more in the future and seeing what exactly all it is capable of. So some pros and cons to kind of wrap us up here. We'll start with the cons because the pros are fun. So one of the cons is, like I said before, power button is way too close to the express keys. You're gonna end up hitting that power button more often than you think you are. Even though the top express key has a little nub on it, so you could feel that it's different from the power button. If you're like me, you're not really thinking to feel for that nub, you're gonna hit that power button and you're gonna turn it off. And you don't lose anything because you're just turning off the display. So when you turn it back on, your programs will still be open as long as your computer didn't shut down. But it's just kind of annoying to have to double or triple check that your fingers are on the express keys and you're not going to hit the power key. Another con, like I said, is the stand. It's good for drawing, but not as a second monitor, and the tablet slips off that little lip kind of easily. And the final con is, maybe it's just mine, but my nib is kind of squeaky. Like if I press too hard on the tablet, yeah, I can't get it down here. If I press too hard, the nib goes in for the kind of, bounce back that it should have, but it makes a little squeaky sound, and it's just really weird. I've never experienced that. I don't know if it's the nib, the pen, or the screen, or a combination of all three, but there's just weird little squeaky sound. So those are the only cons I could think of at the moment. And finally, for some pros, it's lighter and smaller than my Cintiq 12WX. There's less clutter with all the cables being just one cable. It's newer, so you have the updated cords, the correct color gamut, more sensitivity, and finally, the battery-free pen. It's a new thing for HUION, I think, and it was the final nail in the coffin of me getting this tablet. So I hope you guys liked my little chatty talk about this tablet. It's not a perfect review or anything, because the only thing I could compare it to is a tablet that's 11 years old. So if you want a better review, I'd suggest checking out Draw with Jazza. He's done a lot of tablet reviews and he's really good at it, and he'll have more information. But I just kind of wanted to talk about this new tablet relative to what I use it for and what I'm familiar with. So if you like what you see, don't forget to click that like button. You can subscribe for a new video from me every single week. I'm back at it again in the Krispy Kreme. And don't forget to leave a comment or a like. Did I already say that? Whatever. I'm out of practice. Anyway, thank you guys so much for watching, and I'll see you in the next one. Bye-bye.